zoning board meeting for May 28th, 2024. Can I have a roll call?
Yes, sir. Litzy Mamihas.
Here.
Derek Merrill. Present. Jeanette Torres. Vahira Torres. Barry Sherman. Here. Carla Castaneda. Michael Belvin.
Here.
Kristen Rich.
Here.
Rafael Manzanares. Michael Tubman.
Present.
John Zimmerman.
Here.
We have 7.
Okay. Public announcement.
Okay. Please be advised that notice requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act have been complied with and satisfied, and that the special meeting notice will be sufficient notice of the timeliness and conduct of the special meeting of the zoning board of adjustment of the city of New Brunswick has been filed with the city clerk and placed on appropriate bulletin board in the lobby of City Hall, 78 Bayer Street, New Brunswick, New Jersey, and has been transmitted to official newspapers of the city of New Brunswick, namely the Home News Tribune and Star Ledger.
Salute to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Resolutions of the
We
morning.
have no resolutions, so therefore, we finalize the application for that.
Okay. Public hearing. Gloria Legacy LLC, 271 Remsen Avenue, Block 269, Lot 1.01, ZB 2023-10. The applicant proposes to demolish the current 2-story mixed-use building and replace it with a 4-story mixed-use building. The new building will be 1,606 square foot of retail and 18 residential units. Jim Stahl?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen.
Before I start, Jim, does any member of the board have a conflict with this application? No? Okay, continue then.
I will try, the 2 applications I think will be complete and satisfactory to you. I do owe the board an apology for the, not last week's meeting, the meeting before that, and this meeting to Ron. It was rather disjointed and not the way I would have liked to put it on. I don't make excuses, I don't give explanations. It's my responsibility no matter what, and it won't happen again. And I think you saw when I was here last week with Trillium, I think that is the way an application should go in. So again, I want to apologize for any waste of time, but as I say, you can be guaranteed it ain't going to happen again, as we say. The first one we have is the Gloria Legacy. That's the mixed-use, multifamily, and I have both the engineer and the architect and the planner here this evening. There were 4 things, and I'm not trying to limit it, 4 things that the board requested that we're prepared to respond to. So identification of the wall, identification of where the utilities are going to be, I think we addressed that. Number 3 was the lobby and how we're going to secure or supervise the lobby area to protect the residents. And the 4th item, as you recall, I forget who brought it up, it was a good item. Can you make it look nicer? Because there are 2 fronts on the building. So with your permission, I will bring in the architect to answer those 4 questions. Again, I'm not limiting, obviously, whatever questions you have, I have the engineer, Noel, and I have the architect, and then we'll get into planning testimony. Marco, please. You want to hold something?
Can we have a clarification? Is it 18 or 15 minutes?
It's 15.
Yeah, it's nice.
So then let's correct the agenda.
15 is, we've confirmed it, you're correct. Something said 18, something said 13, but we all agree it was 15.
Yeah, this was lifted off of the initial application summary onto here. So that's on us, not on them.
Yeah.
Raise your right hand, please.
You swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing? Wait, no, I gotta tell it. Please, can you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Marco Neves, Neves.
Do you swear or affirm to the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Was Marco here last meeting?
I did not present.
He was not here, but someone from his office did. But this is your practice, is it correct?
Yes,
And are you a licensed architect?
I am.
How many years?
About 20 years.
Are your license in full force and effect?
Correct, yes.
Have you appeared before other zoning boards, planning boards in the state of New
I've
Jersey?
appeared before numerous zoning and planning boards within and outside of New Jersey. I sat on the planning board for approximately 5 years, and I've testified as an architect for.
Chairman.
We'll accept that.
Thank you. And Marco, you were responsible for supervising the project, am I correct?
Yes.
And then Chris did work under us, so.
Well, he's also a licensed architect, so he's very capable as well.
Okay, I wasn't checking that as, all right, why don't you identify what changes were made
Sure.
in response to the board's request?
So I'll point the board's attention to revised sheet PL 1.0. There was a question about a wall over here. And
You're looking at the left side of the plan, is that correct?
yes,
And what is the signature block in the lower right hand?
it's PL 1.0.
And that was part of the original submission.
Correct.
Has this been revised?
Yes.
Recently?
Yes.
And given to the main just with some other items?
I believe it
Oh,
was.
we did, okay.
Okay. So the revision, what it indicates is this wall here, because it's within 10 feet of the property line, we cannot have an open wall. It has to be fire rated. So we are basically providing a wall that goes from here and goes to the end of what was the overhang of the building. The building still overhangs beyond this wall.
But that's in the stairwell where you started with, going to the end of the building, is that correct?
Correct. I have a view of it. I can show it to the board.
Now, is this a revised rendering, sir?
Yes. So the wall that I'm referring to is actually this wall over here.
Chairman,
Along the
should
side.
we mark that as a special exhibit A1 of today's date? Why don't you just put A1 on the lower right-hand corner, please? And that says it's a title, new mixed dash use building dash rear view, 271 Remsen Avenue.
You want me to add this one? So nothing else on the plan changed except for that wall because it is a building requirement.
Well, have we changed you have the wall, which you've identified, is that
Yeah.
correct? And what do we change, if anything, with regard to the lobby area, or how we can address the issues of?
Sure, the security issue is really gonna have to be addressed with the security consultant. We know nowadays that if you ring a doorbell, it can ring anywhere to let the carrier leave a package in so they can buzz somebody in remotely, even if you're not home. And this is really a security issue. It's really not an architectural layout issue. It's more of a security.
Do you have any problem with it being subject to the approval of staff?
Not at all.
Right. And if they give recommendations and they feel that a certain
Sure.
security device is better than another, you can accept
We'll
that.
work with the staff for sure. No worries.
And another question was utilities. These are going to be infrared, is that correct? Or are they going to, is it going to be infrared, or are they going to go to Talmud Street?
I think that was someone, one of the board members at the last meeting mentioned that there's some kind of, you can't pull the utilities from the main
The
street.
5-year
because-
moratorium. but
Yeah,
I can pull the
moratorium,
street.
so if we have to pull from Talmud Street and the utility company is able to provide the capacity that we need, then that's what we would need to do.
Right. And the rendering with regard to the elevations of
Yeah.
material, how
Sure.
did you change that?
So there was a concern from the board last time that the board did not want stucco or ephes on the two main facades, so we've changed. I'll show you this other one instead.
Let's mark that one A2. But it's got a little bit different shading. It's called a front view. All right, just describe to the board what you did.
Sure, so what you see here in the lighter color, which is siding, is gonna be the hardy plank siding, which we testified to previously. I think the towers before, we were showing them as being ephes or stucco. and the board had some objections to it, you know, the nicer material. So we can use a panelized system, metal panels, like an aluminum or something similar. And then along the base, it's gonna be a brick veneer, and then the cornice is also going to be a panelized system. So there won't be any ethos or stucco facing, on the facades facing the street. I think the board was okay on the other facades that were not facing the street, so we would like to do that if possible on those other two facades.
And as you recall, these were the basic issues that the board wanted you to address tonight, is that correct?
I believe those were the outstanding issues.
All right, Mr. Chairman, all I have is witness.
Any member of the board have any questions for this witness? I think your revised plan looks a lot better than it did last time, so.
Thank you.
Everybody happy with that? Yes. Board professionals have any questions? No.
Yes, what is the revision date on the plans?
Thank you.
The revision date. May 7th, 2024.
Todd, do you have any questions?
Just clarify how my apologies if I missed it, how the lobbying and the deliveries are going to work.
Sure, so the concern before was if an Amazon delivery person or UPS or FedEx needed to drop off a package, how would they go about it? And what I was speaking to the owner about is whoever's gonna figure out access into the building, whether it's a card access or an access code or something, they will be able to provide access to a delivery person that rings their bell. If they're not home, I'm sure they'll probably get notified on the phone and they can just buzz them in. And when they leave, the door locks behind them.
Yeah, one of the issues, ladies and gentlemen, was, A, if Amazon get into the lobby, does that access he or she to the rest of the building? That was one of the concerns. And if he or she is outside the building, how does he get into the building? So as I say, I think it's for the board, will have someone, a security consultant or something, come up with a proposed plan and give it to the board professionals.
Yeah, and these buildings usually, you can only access a stairway or an elevator with a card, so it's they're usually secure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Foley, you're up.
Oh,
Sorry, wait till you're
I thought there was going to be engineering testimony.
Well, the board needs it, he's here. Please raise your right hand.
Can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
First name is Edward, last name is Colling, K-O-L-L-I-N-G.
Do you swear or affirm to the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
I am, what's your profession?
I'm a licensed professional planner in New Jersey, also certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners. I've been licensed since 1984. I graduated from Rutgers in 1974. In the 80s, I was director of planning for the city of Jersey City. In the 1990s, I was director of economic development for the city of Elizabeth. I've been practicing planning ever since I graduated from college, so about 50 years now.
Okay, your license, your planning license is in full force effect, is that correct?
That's correct.
And I engaged you, my client engaged you, to provide planning testimony on this application, is that correct?
That is correct.
I don't have to, I'll ask you now to go through your opinions as to,
We'll accept them.
I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll accept them as
Thank
next.
I go too fast, I'm not going too fast.
I get to.
Go ahead.
So I'm assuming you're familiar with the application. There was been testimony a couple of weeks ago and tonight. It's a 10,000 square foot lot, which is about twice as big as the requirement. It's a corner lot. It had been developed as a two-story building with commercial and residential, and there's some accessory structures on it. I think those are still there, and parking around the side and to the back, asphalt. Corner of Talmadge and Remsen Avenue. Opposite side of Remsen is the St. Mary's Apartments, 4 stories. It's a rather large apartment complex. On the same side of Remsen as this property, there is a mixture of commercial and residential uses. Right next door, facing the building to the left, is a mini mart. Across the street, is like an auto body shop. So there's a mixture of commercial and residential on the block. It's zoned C1, and this is a permitted use within that zone. What's proposed is the four-story mixed-use building, as the architect has described, a little bit under 1,400 square feet, commercial on the ground floor. There's also parking behind the building, partially under the building. There's 17 spaces. That calculates out to 19 when you take the EV credit. 15 dwelling units, and there's 12 two-bedrooms and 3 one-bedroom units, and those are on the evenly dispersed on the 3 upper floors. Again, a C1 commercial zone. Property conforms or exceeds things like the required lot area, lot width, lot depth. The variances are for a front setback along Remsen, but it's on 0 versus 10 feet. Talmadge, we do conform to the setback, and that's the residential street, so I think that's a good thing to note. In terms of height, we'll need variances both in terms of the number of stories, with the 4 versus 3, so it's an additional story. And in terms of linear feet, we're 43 feet versus 40 feet, so it's an additional 3 feet in height. In terms of building coverage, that's another variance, 52.7% versus 40%. And the impervious coverage is 92.1% versus 90, so we have an overage of 2.9%. There's also a parking variance that I'll get into it at the end, but there's 35 spaces actually required, 5.6 for the commercial use and 29.4 for the residential use. So to address first the FAR variance, that is a D variance, and that is a requirement of 1.0, and we are requesting 1.86. And I'm sure the board is familiar with that. This type of D variance is, the proofs are not as stringent as, say, for the typical use variance. You don't have to prove particular suitability because this is a permitted use, and you don't have to apply the enhanced level of proof under the DG. The proofs essentially revolve around showing that the site can accommodate the additional floor area without adverse impacts to the zone plan or the character of the area. So at 10,000 square feet, this property is larger than required. In addition, the property is a corner lot and is therefore afforded a greater amount of air and light given that there are 2 street frontages. So corner lots are therefore well suited to accommodate a higher level of development. In addition, the architect has designed a very efficient building by taking parking and tucking it under. It allows for a little bit greater use of the lot area, while at the same time accommodating the calculated 19 parking spaces. I don't see that this project will result in a substantial detriment to the intent and purpose of the zone plan, as this is a permitted use consistent with the zone plan, consistent with the master plan of New Brunswick. Likewise, it will not result in substantial detriment to the public good and general welfare. The proposed development is consistent with the character of Remsen Avenue. As I mentioned, it's both commercial and residential uses. The multifamily aspects consistent with the use that's directly across the street. The commercial aspects of the project will front onto Remsen, which is appropriate. And then the residential entrances are on Talmadge, which is also appropriate, because Talmadge being a residential street. So I think that we've got the proofs necessary for the FAR variance. I'll also mention that the development being permitted in the C1 district means that we're promoting the intent of that zone plan, and therefore I think that the approval of the application would be a municipal action that will guide the appropriate use and development of this property in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare, and that comes from subparagraph 2A of the municipal land use law. I also believe that the proposed development promotes a desirable visual environment. The property as it is, it's not very appealing in terms of visuals. This will be an attractive, conforming building in terms of use, and I think that therefore it'll be a well-designed and modern mixed-use building, and will then promote a desirable visual environment, which is consistent with subparagraph 2I. So if we go to the bulk variances, again, we first have the front setback, which only is issue along along Remsen. Talmadge is conforming. 0 feet is proposed while 10 feet is required. But in my opinion, I think that this is a better approach to design. When you have a commercial use in a commercial area, I think it's better for the building to be more closely oriented and to the pedestrian environment. It helps to activate the pedestrian environment more and activates the street. So I think that that's a better approach to design for a commercial use along Brunswick Avenue. And because this is a better approach to design, I think you can grant this variance under the C2 criteria. And the granting of the variance will not result in a substantial detriment to the intent purposes of the zone plan. Again, commercial uses are permitted, so I think that really promotes that intent to this project does that. And it will not result in a substantial detriment to the public good or general welfare, because this will improve the pedestrian environment, I think, along Brunswick Avenue, and that's really more beneficial. So I think you can grant that front setback under the C2 criteria where the benefits outweigh the detriment. Seconds? Okay. So the proposed development also will require a 3-foot variance for the proposed height and a variance for the additional story. I believe that this is a reasonable approach to the development of this property. As I previously stated, it's a corner property, so it has more access to air and light. It's also a larger property, so it can accommodate the additional height, in my opinion. I think also if you look at it from an urban design perspective, I think it's good urban design to put a larger building at the corner because it sort of acts as a bookend, kind of defines the end of the block. And so therefore I think it'll fit in nicely, and it is consistent pretty much what I think with what you would see as the scale of the building across the street. So I think that because of this better approach to urban design, again, this would fall under the C2 criteria. The project does advance to the zone plan, the intent of the zone plan and the master plan by creating this permitted mixed use in this area, and therefore there's no substantial detriment to the zone plan, and will not result in any substantial detriment to the public good or general welfare. It is 3 feet taller than was proposed, but I think that if we look at the rear setback next to Talmadge, it's substantial, 38 feet, and therefore I think there'll be very limited impact, and I think therefore the benefits outweigh any detriment. That brings us to the coverage variances. The building coverage is at 52.7 versus 40%. You have to then look at the corner location and the size of this lot. I think you can accommodate the additional coverage, and I think the additional coverage really is a result of covering some of the parking. So there's some beneficial aspects to hiding the parking under the building. Again, that's a better approach to design. The impervious coverage is just slightly above the requirement at 2.1%. There is going to be stormwater facilities created, so I think that mitigates it, as well as the landscaping that is being provided. So when you look at it as a whole, the granting of the variance should not result in any substantial detriment to the intent and purpose of the zone plan, nor should it result in any substantial detriment to the public good or general welfare. Notice that would apply to both the building coverage and the impervious coverage. In terms of parking, I think we first would look at the commercial parking. 5.6 spaces are required. But this, again, is a neighborhood commercial zone, and the type of commercial that is typically located in this type of building serves a very localized area. So there really should be very little demand for parking. It probably could be accommodated on the street, because that's the type of people who live in the area who come and shop in this for convenience goods more than likely. The master plan itself, when it discusses neighborhood commercial areas, says that these areas provide commercial uses that are targeted to neighborhood or community needs. So that's what the intent is here, to provide that type of commercial use, not a commercial use that will draw people from great distances and generate a lot of parking demand. In terms of residential units, I noted that the New Brunswick parking regulations basically mirror the RSIS standards. And if you look at RSIS standards, in my opinion, as primarily an urban planner, those standards are more geared to a suburban environment versus an urban environment, sort of, as is New Brunswick. In addition, when you look at the requirements for a mid-rise apartment building, which this is, the RSIS steers you to a garden apartment. A garden apartment is a very suburban type of land use. A mid-rise apartment building in an urban environment such as New Brunswick really functions more as the high-rise building would function. It's got an elevator, it's got, and people enter through a lobby, they go up into their units. It's not like a garden apartment at all. If you looked at those standards, the requirement would not be the 29 spaces or so that the garden apartment would require. That calculates out to a need for 18 parking spaces. So that's more, in my opinion, it's much more closely reflects the type of parking demand that you might expect from this building. And when you factor in, as we were saying before, the EV parking, you calculate this parking spaces as 19. So we're in that range. I think that we're close enough that the granting of variance is not going to result in a substantial detriment to the zone plan, nor will it result in substantial detriment to the public good or general welfare. The RSIS actually itself says that alternative parking standards can be considered if these better reflect local conditions. And these local conditions would include such factors as urban versus suburban location, or the possibility of on-street parking opportunities. And there's parking on Remsen Avenue, on the side streets, on both sides of the street. Yes, there's competition with those spaces because everybody who's there now would park there as well. But those are the types of spaces that you would expect to turn over or shared, and they're publicly accessible. So that does create a parking resource. So for those reasons, I believe that the parking variance can also be granted and without substantial detriment to the zone plan or to the public welfare. And that pretty much concludes my testimony. I think we covered the E4 variance, and the C variance is under the C2 criteria.
Thank you. Any member of the board or board professionals have any questions?
Can we see the rendering again, the updated one that's from the front? Because you talked a lot about air and light. So I'd love perspective about air and light. That was part of the rationale for the two there.
I think there's only one user.
Just
I think
one.
it's just the FAR.
FAR,
Yeah.
not building height?
Well, building height as well.
It's a C?
Yeah.
And the idea is that in order, and it might be more visible in the plan view than this, but I think from this angle you can see it as well. Because it's a corner property, you have the width of Talmadge, which provides air and light, and on one side, and then you have the width of Remsen in front. And in the rear, the way the architect and engineer have laid out the property, there's a 38-foot setback between the building and then the property line as the adjacent residential use. That's 38 feet is pretty significant. I can't recall off the top of my head if that residential building has another side setback. I'm assuming that it does, because they're all detached residential homes going downtown. So that gives you a fairly significant distance between the two structures. And I think that therefore the additional floor area and the height really will not have a substantial impact because of that. Streets functioning as the additional setbacks and the rear setback being over 30, almost 38 feet.
And just to clarify, what are the D variants, what are the C variants?
The D variance is the floor area, and that will require an affirmative vote of 5 members. And the C variances are the height, both in stories and in linear feet, the front setback, and then the coverage variances.
Yeah, helpful because there was one version where it was 47 feet, and that was, right. But now it's 40.
It was at 47, now it's come down.
Yeah.
Before we can continue from there, I had notes from last meeting on, and from the big Mel report in, as I was drafting the conditions. And I had, for the variances, I had the height, the front yard setback, two of them, right? Because it's, both fronts are non-compliant, yes?
When I looked at the plans, I
No,
thought
one of
that the
them is
town.
compliant?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Building coverage, impervious coverage, parking, front yard parking? I think I had one here for front yard parking.
That is in your report, Tom, but I think that's an artifact.
That might be, because I'm not sure that there is any front yard parking issue here.
Might be, so let's double check.
Yeah, so I just want to double check, you know.
Well,
Might be from the
all right,
prior.
one more. Right, I just want to look at the grid. Okay.
While I was looking, how does that height compare to the same area apartments across the street?
I haven't taken an actual measurement, but just from the provider it's a four-story building, same area as a four-story building, I think they're gonna be relatively close. Yeah. And the other thing is just the size of that same area apartments, it's very large.
That goes all the way.
So I'm assuming if I were coming down Remsen, that my eyes would be drawn over there rather than over to the opposite side of the street. But it's not gonna, in other words, it's not gonna dominate.
Right.
Follow up on parking. So is all the parking going to be then designated for residential?
I don't know. I would think that that would be the case. It would not be for visitors. I would think that what could be appropriate is that if there was a store owner or an employee who would want to do it on a shared basis, that would be a reasonable thing to do, especially during weekdays.
So you'll be committed to the tenants, which would include the commercial use, so that it would not be non-residents or non-commercial employees, so to speak, in the building.
Okay, so in theory, you're reducing the amount of parking that a tenant who's living in the building may have access to.
Yes. Well, we look at the count, we look at the count, we've got the 15, I have to make sure my numbers are right, the 15 units, and we have 17 spaces plus the two
Bonus.
bonus. And if no one there has an EV vehicle, so now I've got 17 spaces for 15 units. And so there's two
So
extra
it's
spaces,
unit.
it really isn't, so that every space will be allocated to a tenant, including the commercial tenant. He may want to, the owner of the commercial space may want it, or he or she may want to reserve it for their manager.
Okay.
Is there a condition that the payment has to be made at the file?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that there is front yard parking spaces, but I believe, I just went through the zoning code real quick. It looks like it only applies to properties in residential zones, which is not in a C1 commercial zone. So the front yard parking variance is inapplicable. But there are two spaces that are in front of the building on the town street.
Yes, after you mentioned that, if you look on the town side, two of the spaces extend into what would be the 10-foot setback.
But it's not an issue with that. All right, glad you cleared that up.
So, building off of what Barry was saying about like, how people are getting to places, so if with the commercial space, they might have some parking spots depending, the residents who live there and sleep there might have some parking spots. Where would loading and unloading happen?
That I don't know, but I'm assuming that it would happen on the street.
So there is a variance for loading.
Possibly, I don't know if the architect has
Yeah,
that.
Yes, I can speak to you.
Yeah, so that's a variance.
Marco?
So, I mean, generally speaking, it's such a small establishment. They could either do it up the front, or they can temporarily just park in the back and just load and unload through there. And as far as parking is concerned, thing about residential versus commercial, usually when the residents are home sleeping, the commercial store is closed. Usually when during the day, when they're working, the store is open, the residents' cars probably won't be there. There might be some spots available in case there's anyone that's driving to the store. They kind of offset each other at different times, so they complement each other a little bit.
But we would call that shared parking almost, is that correct, Marco?
I suppose you can describe it as that.
But a convenience store would be open more.
Yeah,
That is what-
we don't know what kind of tenant is set for that yet.
But we believe that any tenant will be servicing the building. I mean, I'm not, Jeremy, just I always like to use as an example, he's not gonna, guys, being quiet, he's not gonna drive to that location on his way to New Brunswick to the courthouse or something to shop in that particular commercial area and look for a space. You know, that is an area where the tenants will walk to, or someone may drive, and maybe a customer that drives by and knows that particular facility is there, and then he or she would find a spot legally or illegally and go in and try and get out before the ticket came. I mean, it's something we don't know.
Right, you have to stack a convenience store, because I haven't seen a convenience store, you did? Or if you said a convenience store. Did we clarify the loading and unloading, or we just said it was gonna happen in the back, or maybe on the street?
Said all of those were possible.
We're not sure, I would say either way, yeah. I mean, again, it's a fairly small store, I mean, these deliveries for a small store, I would think they're not that often, perhaps.
Marco, what is the square footage of the commercial space? Do
I
you have that?
believe that's about 1,900 square feet.
So it's 1,300 or 90.
1,300,
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, there's two things to think about. Thing number one is your ordinance says that commercial uses need to have an off-street loading space. That's what the ordinance says, that's a requirement. If they don't have that, you need to grant a variance. Separate of that is, if you're granting the variance, you should be satisfied that what realistically is gonna happen is not going to block circulation on the street. So, if they can't provide an on-site space, which is preferable, and the testimony is when it'll sort of just happen, the board should be satisfied with the where and the details of that are gonna be in a spot that you know about, and if there's a half a block away, a shared on-street loading space, maybe that's a realistic testimony, or maybe, there's some, but you might wanna get some clarity on what that would become.
And to that end, the zoning code requires the loading zone, it doesn't say how big the loading zone is, it doesn't give parameters, so you could have a wide array of trucks, and so different uses might have different trucks that service them. I think a consideration here might be considering a limitation on the size of the trucks that could service the site to ensure that nobody's bringing semis to the site and occupying the entire parking lot or the street for loading the truck size.
Well, Dan, would it make sense that when we go to the city to request an ordinance making one spot on there a loading, unloading zone, make it a small spot?
So, not fully speaking for the city here, because the city council would have to take whatever action they deem appropriate in that way. I think that it would be better, and my board planner and board engineer, feel free to correct or, object or do whatever you want with this information. Maybe have this vehicle be loading on site, have it maybe be like an SU-30 type size vehicle, limited to that kind of sizing, and not on the street, because on the street, a dedicated loading zone, it eats into, Todd, I can't see them, sorry. It eats into on-street parking, right? So I think it compounds an issue there, and I think it would be preferable for the vehicle to be on site, even if it's not a dedicated loading zone, that it does its loading on site with a smaller truck.
Well,
You can make a condition that all loading must be done in the rear parking lot.
That's what I was just saying, that we would designate a loading, one of the spaces we would have would be for the commercial facility for loading and unloading, and the commercial tenant is therefore that's a space.
Well, subject to the board's approval, you don't have to dedicate space, as long as you know there's area in the parking lot that a truck could, for 45 minutes or an hour, do its loading, unloading, paperwork, and leave.
Right.
And
It's not,
Subject to the board's approval.
right, it's not uncommon for a truck to pull into a drive aisle really quick, unload and
Yes.
leave. And no one's harmed if it's 5 or 10 minutes. But it just probably can't be like a 57-foot truck.
No,
Yeah.
we would limit, we would agree to limit the access of delivery vehicles.
And just a follow-up on that, where does a tenant who's moving in, would it be the same situation? That's not gonna be a 40-minute,
So you're right. We don't want them on the street,
right?
so that would be a space that is designated for loading and unloading by the landlord, be it for commercial or for the move-in, move-out.
So Chair, I think
That could be a half day.
the totality of all the comments and testimony seems like it might make sense to take a space, one of the
Yes.
parking stalls,
Yes.
designated for commercial loading at certain times and resident loading when they need it,
And parking absent those times.
Parking absent.
Yeah, so it's still a space, it's just, it's a flexible space.
So.
And I would still ask to amend the application to include the additional variance that Todd says I need, for no parking space on street for loading, unloading. Did I
On
hear-
site.
Oh, on site, so.
No,
I
not
need
on
the
street, because
variance.
on street is, that's, you need city council approval. On
Got it.
site is your property.
So we can make it a condition that they require a spot on site for loading and unloading.
Right.
But then at that point, they would have a loading zone.
It's not a variance.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a variance.
And does that space, so now at night, we're assuming there's no deliveries, and that space be used for a resident
They've already
parking?
opened up for
Yeah.
parking.
So maybe whatever, from 8 in the morning to 5 at night, it's for loading.
We just wanna make sure that that space can conform to the regular stall size. It doesn't have to be any bigger, because sometimes loading.
You know, it may be easier just to make it a 24-hour loading, unloading, I'll tell you why. If you're moving in, you don't want to be locked into 5 o'clock and you gotta get out, so we'll look at that.
Whatever.
We'll work with the
Or,
engineer.
or food deliveries happen at like 3 AM, 4 AM, like there are lots of different.
Admittedly, the Grubhub, DoorDash drivers, they're gonna park on the street and do whatever they want.
Oh, I meant like if it's a convenience store.
Oh,
Like a convenience
Oh,
store,
okay.
7-Eleven, if there are deliveries.
You haven't decided what use it's gonna be anyway, so we don't know if it's a convenience store, a barber shop, whatever.
That's true.
the zone does only have a limited, it's a very relatively limited amount of, uses over there. So it's one of the more limited, commercial zones, being the C1 versus some of the other ones, so
Okay.
you can't get crazy.
Yes. Anyone else have any additional questions? Okay, thank you for your testimony.
That's,
Yes.
Just to make sure, are you gonna designate a parking spot for delivery that is gonna be on the plan?
I think
Yes.
we'll work with the town
Yeah,
engineer.
we're gonna designate a loading, unloading zone, and that will be shown in the resolution compliance, that'll be shown on the plan.
Okay, everybody satisfied so far? Okay, we open up to the public for public comment. Mr. Cradaville, come forward.
Good evening.
Please state your name, spell your last name for the record.
Charlie Cradaville, K-R-A-T-O-V-I-N.
You swear from the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Give Todd a second. Oh, you can go.
I would start by saying I apologize, I wasn't able to review the record, so I only know what I heard, saw tonight, and I asked, if possible, could I have A1 displayed for the public to see?
I haven't seen
Mark,
it.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like we really couldn't see any of the
I
stuff.
mean, the camera doesn't go around, and
No, and yeah, thank you. Okay, and I had some questions about the existing building. Is the existing building occupied?
I think it was demolished.
Demolished.
Demolished, okay. How long was it abandoned? Does anybody know?
I think a couple of years.
I wanted to ask who are the principals of the applicant, Gloria Legacy?
I can provide that during the ownership disclosure. I don't have it, I think he's here, but I don't have him available at this point in time. But he's on the disclosure.
Got it. And I know there was some discussion about what kind of commercial tenants might be in the structure? Is there anybody here who could speak to what the possibilities are or what the sort of priorities or goals are?
If you give me a second and you continue on, I can tell you what's permitted there.
Sure, sure. And, yeah, just one final question, I guess, is would the applicant be willing to install and maintain a bus shelter on Remsen out front?
What's the best, Charlie?
Would you be willing to put in a bus shelter so that your residents and others can go to and from the
We'll
location?
certainly look into that. That we have to check with the bus company, who's gonna put it up. But I certainly think we can look at it.
Okay, certainly would be, a good hub for transit. And I know on Livingston Ave, we were able to get a lot of shelters installed. And, Remsen Avenue has buses running up and down Remsen. I'm not sure exactly where they're stopping, but, if this
We'll check with the bus and then we have to check with the city because it would be on the right of way of the city, so, but we will look into that.
Okay, and, I guess those are all the questions I had. I would just ask, especially for the next application, which I'm more interested in, please, display the exhibits so that the public can see them from where we're sitting, where the camera is. Thank you, Carlos, for documenting.
And we'll just bring in the permitted uses in the zone. So this is everything in the zone, so it includes some other stuff. But 1 and 2 family dwellings subject to the R5A standards, hardware and general merchandise stores, grocery stores and delis, restaurants, packaged goods stores, although they would need a liquor license for something like that, personal service business, retail clothing stores, general offices, and mixed-use buildings containing the commercial uses that are permitted in the zone with residential uses above.
Okay. Any other member of the public have any comment? Okay, seeing none, close that portion. For discussion, anyone have any other questions or comments? I personally think the building looks a lot better than it did last time we were here. Same here with apartments, is all brick. At least we have some brick in that to kind of match what the other buildings are in the area. As far as parking, they have one for at least each unit. And a lot of people, I think, that are going to be in this building might not have cars, might be walking. The demographic has changed so that a lot of people do walk more, and looks okay to me personally.
Recommend mostly departments so that then everyone has like a designated assigned parking, but I think that's
Yeah.
really good to.
Okay, anyone want to read some conditions?
Sure. Should the board act favorably, the following conditions shall apply. Compliance with the terms of the city engineering report dated May 22nd, 2024. Submission of all necessary easements and or cross-access agreements for review and approval by the board attorney and city engineer. Payment of a site performance bond and amount to be reviewed and approved by the city engineer. Submission of site inspection escrow deposit for engineering inspection fees and amount calculated pursuant to title 16.24.1.160. Water and sewer connection fees, payment of all water and sewer connection fees pursuant to titles 13.04 and 13.08. Issuance of a road opening permit from the city engineer if required. Planning report, compliance with the terms of the Big Nail planning report.
Can you just slow down a little bit? I'm not
Oh, I'm
able to hear
sorry.
everything you're saying.
I'm sorry, I just tried to chew through this, I apologize.
I appreciate it, but.
Compliance with the terms of the Big Nail planning report dated May 21st, 2024. Mandatory monetary contribution to the city's tree preservation trust fund in the amount to be required by 8.48 if applicable. Planning review escrow funded for all anticipated post-approval reviews. Payment of any other fees due to the city of New Brunswick related to development or use of this project. Payment of all outstanding taxes and water sewer fees. Approval, Middlesex County Board approval or waiver, DNR Canal Commission approval or waiver, Freehold Soil Conservation District approval or waiver, submit engineering site plan to comply with any changes required by planning or engineering memos or plan amendments offered at the hearing, submit architectural plans to comply with any changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments offered at the hearing. Then we've got, I'll come back to these like little notes at the end. All utilities and other site improvements to be maintained by the applicant at their sole expense. All on-site utilities to be constructed underground. All temporary encroachments in the public right of way shall require city council approval. All construction staging shall be done on site unless an encroachment allowing to the public right of way is approved by city streets shall be kept clean of sediment and debris. The applicant shall cause the streets to be cleaned if directed to do so by the Director of Public Works. Traffic pads shall be installed at all construction exits. Replacement of damaged streets, curbs, and sidewalks as per direction city engineer. Schedule a pre-construction meeting with the city engineering department. Variances, we have a D4 FAR variance, we have a height variance, front yard setback variance, building coverage variance, pervious surface variance, parking variance, and we have a waiver, design waiver for lighting level. Special conditions, we have payment into the payment in lieu of parking fund, that there will be one parking space utilized as a dedicated loading zone space, and that the applicant will explore the potential to install a bus shelter, I guess, in front of their property on Remsen Avenue.
Yes.
Okay. What else am I missing?
Foundation plantings?
That's, let's see, waiver for foundation plantings. Hold on. Yes, landscape planting, okay.
Parking buffer?
Landscape, that's a landscape buffer, right? Landscape parking buffer, okay. Anything else?
Landscape screening. Or
What's the
parking
screening for? It's all for the parking lot? And parking lot screening.
They need an exception for driveway width.
They need a waiver for driveway width? Or is it for aisle width? I guess it doesn't.
Driveway width,
Is it
section
width?
8.8.
The driveway, like from the street onto the site is 8.8?
No, the section is 8.8. The,
Oh, section, 8.8.
yeah.
Okay, but so is it the?
It's supposed to be between 30 and
But is
36.
it the actual driveway, or is it the aisle, or is it both?
Is it the actual driveway?
But then the aisle is fine?
Yes.
Okay, driveway, got it. That is, looks like all the conditions and additional.
Okay, I have a motion to approve, a motion,
I make a motion to approve with all the conditions.
Okay, Mr. Calvin? Lindsay? Great, Lindsay Mamihis?
Yes.
Derek Merrill?
Yes.
Barry Sherman?
Yes.
Michael Belvin?
Yes.
Kristen Rich?
Yes.
Michael Tubman?
Yes.
John Newman?
yes.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right.
We're going to move this the way the application should go in. Wins are always better.
Okay, now we will proceed with the second application. Camp Terry International LLC, 72 Remsen Avenue, Block 158, Lot 23, ZB 2023-11. The applicant proposes to demolish the existing single-family home and construct a new two-story, two-family dwelling in the C1 zoning district. We are seeking approval for D and C variances to complete this project. Install.
Thank you very much. You have me thinking now, but I just a question to you because
Oh, you're good.
this, you may recall, there were three things that were left open. Number one was the stairs had to be moved back because they were within the city right of way. We were going to move them back to show that. There is we had the same issue with regard to utilities, infrared, or how we would deliver utilities. And then there was a question that was added. The condensing unit was moved from the front to the rear. I have Larry Johnson, who is the architect, who would be the first up to clarify those submissions. Bless you. And then I would have Mr. Colling, again, as the planner, although I think his testimony was a little bit shorter than it was from the other. So may I begin?
Sure, you may cover the first witness.
Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson was previously sworn in and qualified. Remember it again?
Should we qualify him again, Dan?
Yeah, that's not swear, oh, well, swear names first. Can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record?
Yes, I trade as Larry Johnson, architect. My name is Lawrence Johnson, LAURENCEJOHNSON.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth? You may proceed.
Johnson will accept you as expert witness.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Following last
meeting before this board. There were several questions with regard to, I think you covered the utilities, which the suggestion was they be infrared because of the 5-year moratorium. There's also the issue that came up later with regard to the condensing unit, was in the front. I believe you moved it back on the revised plans. And most importantly, the stairs, the front stairs, or what we call in the old days a stoop, was within the city's right of way. And you were going to move that back. Please describe to the board what was done.
Okay. There was discussion as to whether or not we should push it back into the house or move the house back in order to have the stairs start after the property line. What I propose to do is just to move the entire house back to, we have 7 risers, which is 6 or 7 treads depending upon the grade at the time. So we'll be moving the house back about 7 feet in order to make sure that the stairs, and they would be a brick instead of
Let me
wood.
help you here. And this was a print that was submitted to Mr. Dominguez following the last meeting, is that correct?
I don't know if he has this or not. There was some,
I received them and distributed them, but since I'm not the reviewer, I cannot say conclusively if that's what I got. Todd, yeah, Tony, was that
I don't
submitted to us?
think we have this.
We're looking at something here.
But there was some, I thought it was going to be in the report, but there didn't seem to be anything directly one way or the other.
I didn't get any architectural, I don't know about, you got them? Yeah, that's engineering. We didn't get any
There's
architectural.
a site plan.
Well, we can label it as A1.
The 4-page document will label.
No, there's just one, there's just 4 copies.
I kind of,
So there's 4 copies of the same sheet.
oh.
Yeah, it was just.
Along with circular just to
Just
show the board can share. This would be A1.
Stairs are going to be out of brick instead of wood.
Wait 1 second. And one more. And Larry,
And can you please just show the crowd?
We show it to the public.
Larry, this is a plan marking A1. This is kind of stretch it out there. It says variance application to convert single family to a 2-family dwelling at 72 Remsen Avenue, New Brunswick, New Jersey. As you look at it on the left side is the existing condition, and as you look at it on the other side, it says proposed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you did these plans, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And where does it show that the stairs were moved?
Well, the stairs did come out onto the sidewalk previously. The house has been moved back so that the house is about 7 to 8 feet, depending upon the engineer's drawing, beyond the sidewalk. So the stairs start at the edge of the property line. And the entire house and stairs are on the owner's property.
And Mr. Young will come up later with the word on view, and he'll describe the engineering plans. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
It's a day now.
there was not a date,
But it is a date. It's been revised. The revision date is May 8th, 2024.
All right, any board member professional have any questions for Mr. Johnson?
I would like to clarify the issue, and I don't know if this is the right time. I know we talked about the, oh, there's no more walk-up. Is this a walk-up now? See how there's it's a fence, so then is this gonna be a full curb?
Probably.
Oh. See how that,
Can I come up?
Yeah, go up there. Go up there.
fact, I think this is mostly just to show the stairs and we'll
Oh,
go
yeah,
back.
yeah.
Everything
Oh,
else
the
is.
stairs are not on the sidewalk.
To show the look of what's gonna happen after the change.
Okay?
No?
Any other questions? Anybody else have any questions? Todd or Dan, you have any questions?
No, not this.
No.
Okay, you can call your next witness.
No? Is there an answer, look at Mr. Dominguez?
Can you please state your name, spell your last name for the record? Do you swear from tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Mr. Young, we heard previously,
Mr. Young was here last meeting, so we'll accept him as an expert.
who previously qualifies, that's correct. Again, I went through with Mr. Johnson, the three issues that the board wanted to see, besides planning, was A, the location of the condenser, where it was a change, number two, the utilities, which is made a note, and three, and most importantly, how you resolve taking the stair out of the right of way.
The thing that we revise is, number one, is,
What are you referring to?
I moved the condenser.
What plan are we looking
We
at?
talk, it is sheet 202.
And what is the date of the last revision?
It's May 8, 24.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we did is, we removed the condenser from the side to the back. But in accordance with the engineer review, we need to put the condenser on top, on
You gotta stack them, one
side.
behind the other.
Because of the setback of 10 feet, and it's only 25 feet, so we cannot really comply with that unless we put it to the back. The other one is we replace the proposed laterals. Before we are going to use the existing lateral for sanitary and water. Now we're going to replace it with the new one, as per the engineer.
So we need the note added about the infrared.
Right, yeah, I have to add that to this note.
And the steps are still in the right of way.
The step I still, there was some,
Well, Mr. Johnson's indicated we moved it back. Can you come up here, Larry? Larry, to help me, let's reconcile your testimony on the architecture and how we're going to reconcile it with the engineering plan. How far are we going to move the building back?
The building is going to shift back, let's say it's 8 feet.
8 feet back.
Yeah, 8 foot.
Okay.
So whatever
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah. We're still in compliance with the setback, anyway.
yeah.
If you want to move it by 8 feet, we can do it.
So we're sliding the whole house back 8 feet, is that correct? And that will bring the stairwell into compliance and out of the right of way, is that correct? And we're not creating any more variances by sliding.
All the other square footage and everything stays exactly the same.
And we understand that we're gonna have to provide a revised plan for resolution compliance, showing the relocated house, is that correct?
That is correct. It's mostly engineering. My plan will be altered after this
Yes.
plan is.
Because you know what, just so we all understand, we've all been involved in the business. The architectural plan and the engineering plan have to be identical. So all the dimensions and everything with regard to moving the house back have to match, we agree.
That is correct.
So your impervious coverage is 58.8, where 60 is the max. Is the steps gonna affect that, since you're moving it back onto the property, which wasn't accounted for?
We're approximately 8 by 8, which would be about 64 square feet. So I didn't do the math on
We will, what we will do is we will comply with the 60%. What we will do is to put some landscape at the front, where we have the setback of 8 feet. So that area, that will be, that 8 feet area will be providing some landscaping there. So it will not be impervious.
So we don't change the numbers.
So we don't change the number. Oh,
You have to change the
if
number.
the worst case is,
But somebody have to eliminate some of the sidewalk.
80%.
And I mean, I'm just an old, country lawyer,
Because the steps you didn't account for.
but, right.
So now you're moving them to your property, you have to account them on your property
Right,
as impervious coverage.
yes, like I said, we will limit that to 60%, to whatever is the
So
maximum.
what would you remove if it exceeds?
No, I mean, you said that we will move it. We move it to the 8 feet, then the gap, this gap will be landscaping, so it will not be impervious.
Yeah, but it's gonna be impervious in the back.
Because you're
You're shifting
shifting
that
about
all
60
out.
square feet of impervious.
I hope, no, here's the question, thank you. Right now, it's impervious at a given percentage, number
Right.
one.
Okay.
And that is with the stairs on city property. That's with it. Now, when we move the house back, all the sidewalk, the stairs is gonna be on our property,
Right.
thereby increasing the impervious based upon what's no longer on the right of way, which is on our property. So how do we resolve
Yeah,
that?
the 2%, multiply that by the 2,500 square foot, that is 50 square foot. That's 50 square foot, and if it's the width of the stair is only 8 feet, it can accommodate it.
Okay, so this
It's
says,
1.2%.
yeah, it says
It can be
58,
accommodated.
this says 58.8, so you have 1.2%. The 64 square feet is about 2.5%. So that's 1.25%
50.
more than what's, would be allowed. You get up to like 61%.
Can I, yes. If we have to stay, if I need to, the house is 17 wide, 20 foot wide. If we shrink the house by a couple inches,
Well,
we'll.
why do you have to shrink the house? Why can't you shrink the width of the stairs?
That's also.
We could make the
If
stairs.
you
4 foot
shrink the
wide.
width,
If we do 4 foot wide on the stairs, then we wouldn't have to do them less than.
then you've eliminated the coverage issue.
We could do that.
Does that work, Larry?
Yeah, it's real tight in terms of percentage. but
Well, it's a residential unit, I
How
mean,
many square feet do they?
4 feet.
Yeah, there. 30, it's not gonna work,
What's that?
is it?
Let's just,
What's 1.2%?
well, it assumes this is, so let's see, building coverage, it's got a number right there, it's 160. And this is 25 by 100 long, right? Okay, that doesn't make sense. What is building? It doesn't matter. Yep, wrong column. No, it's also doesn't matter. It's gonna be column. So 5.8 times.
you also
We
get
can,
for a
no,
large
that's another area that we can reduce the impervious. At the back of it,
So
there
they
is
got 30,
a,
and they need to lose 34 square feet from the stairs.
So they allow 30 feet?
Yeah, they got 30 foot of wiggle room, assuming that that's a tight 548.8.
And you need, so they need 32, so they're off by 2 feet.
Is there any other impervious coverage? Like, there's some concrete in the back.
yes,
Can we just take some of the concrete off in the back?
yes, we can also cut the width at the back here,
Okay.
that we can, we can limit it to 60%, that's not
All right,
something that is doable. That's all at the back.
all right.
The goal is to not
Yeah.
exceed 60.
All right. So I just want to bring up one more thing, because you said move the stairs back 8 feet. You don't have 8 feet to bring the whole building back, because then you would create a rear setback variance by like a half foot. So you might need to make the stairs a little bit shorter than 8 feet. You have, how much do they have, Tots? Like 7.4 feet that you move the stairs back?
Can we share, can we read it quickly?
Yeah, well, I mean, since we are, taking the house down, probably lower the house just a little bit in order to have one less riser.
What's the solution, Larry?
I said, since we're doing a new house, the floor elevation does not have to be at the exact same floor
Right.
elevation that it is now. It's a little lower and the stairs can go.
So shorten the front to back floor.
The point being that they'll comply with the 60%
Yeah.
unit.
Yes, thank you.
However, they decide to do that, they will comply.
Okay.
We're not asking for a variance for
A
that.
walkway going in the back, a few inches here, a few inches there, so we should maintain the 60%. Whatever you do.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to summarize, we don't need to design the building precisely at this moment with Mr. Johnson, Mr. Young. If you act favorably, what's gonna happen is when they resubmit revised plans, we're gonna check that the building got moved back approximately 7 or 8 feet. We're gonna check that the back, the rear setback still complies. We're gonna check the impervious coverage. We're gonna check all those things, and if it meets the standards, we're gonna sign off on it. If it doesn't, we're gonna say, hey, you need to reduce the building one way or another, or reduce the impervious, or you gotta come back to the board and get new variance.
Right.
So, at the end of the day, we'll get back to square.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for Mr. Young from the board or board professionals? Okay, seeing none, call your next witness.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman, you gotta wake up again, sir. I pick on him, Mr. Chairman, so I'm allowed to. Raise your right hand, Ed.
You're still sworn in.
I recognize you, Mr. Lindo,
I'm still gonna ask you to go slow.
and I try to speak slower.
Yes.
Okay, this project is also in a C1 district, because it's in two-family is permitted use. But because it's a two-family home, the bulk standards of the 5A zone are used, and that's what the engineer and architect have been working on from what I read in the previous transcript. It's a 25 by 100 lot, which is non-conforming, but I point out that it appears from the tax maps that every lot on this block, Brunswick Avenue, is 25 by 100, and if you go down the side streets, Townsend, I think it is, and Salem, most of them are 25 by 100, so this whole area seems to be, had been subdivided distance past that 25 by 100 lot, so it's pretty much in keeping with the character of the area. The building had a deficiency in front setback at 1.8 feet, and I'm just listening to the testimony now like all of you. But if it is pushed back a distance that will not exceed 8 feet, so that it or 7-point-something feet, so it doesn't create a rear yard variance, you're gonna have a front yard variance now that's really de minimis. You're gonna go from 1.8 feet, if it goes back, say 7 feet plus or minus, you're gonna be 8.8. So you're only gonna be off by a 1.2 feet or 1.5 feet in that range. And if you look at the block of this block again, everything is pretty close to the street. So this is not gonna be out of character, it's not gonna create a substantial detriment, it's not gonna affect the zone plan. And you have to remember, this is a permitted use. The side setbacks are currently sufficient, 0.8 on one side, and then the other side, it's only 4 feet. And that's because you've probably seen some of the renderings that building has sort of a little funky extension of the second floor that kind of creeps out there, could cause a 4-foot setback on the one side, the left side of the base of the building. So now you're at 4.8 combined. That's going to be improved because when that comes off, that extension, it's 7.2 feet, I believe. If they're just sliding it back, that will remain the variance that we're requesting with a combined setback of 8 feet, 7.2 plus 0.8. So now you're getting closer to the 12. I really think that's about as close as you're going to get given the 25 by 100 lot size. The existing building coverage is 42.4%, 40% is the permitted, and you heard testimony, it's gonna come down to 60%, so it's not gonna be, you're not gonna get a variance there. The FAR variance is, the existing FAR is 1.11, and the permitted is 0.55. The proposed development was utilizing a lot of the existing footprint foundation, now it's being slid back. But I think that really sort of dictates what the building coverage is going to be and what the FAR ends up being. So the removal of that little odd addition off the back will help to decrease the floor area, and it also helps to increase the setback. So I think I already described what that would be. And we're also going to improve on the front setback. The building coverage ends up being reduced from 42.4 to 40.4, so this is a very de minimis building coverage. So we're really getting close to what the zone plan intended, and the height is being reduced from 31.5 to 28.6. And then lastly, the FAR is going from 1.11 to 0.81. So these are all improvements, and a lot of those are due to the removal of the second floor, which reduces building coverage, increases site setback, reduces floor area. So it's all quite an improvement, especially if you look at the appearance of the building. It's been somewhat poorly remodeled over time. It's not a very attractive looking building as it stands today. So first, to address the FAR requirement, it's again 0.55 is required or permitted, and the FAR is 0.81. Again, that's a reduction. You heard me describe before that this type of D variance doesn't require the same level of proofs as the use variance would require. I won't go through all that again, but the proofs are essentially, again, showing that the site can accommodate the additional floor area without adverse impacts. And again, I think that's pretty much the case here today, mostly because it's in keeping with the character of the area. If you look at the buildings that are there on that street, they seem to all have side yard setbacks. They're all built in the same sort of era. There's a mixture, a couple of commercial structures, mostly residential structures. So I think when this building is built, it will be a significant improvement over what's there now in appearance alone, but also will decrease or remove multiple variances. I think what we're going to be left with are really just 3 bulk variances along the FAR. So I think that the FAR variance can be granted in that this property, although small, can accommodate the additional floor area because of the character of the area, how it will fit in with the character of the area, the surrounding area. It won't result in a substantial detriment to the zone plan. It is a permitted use. It also removes multiple inconsistencies with the existing zone plan, and I don't see it being a substantial detriment to the public good or general welfare. Again, if you look at the buildings that are there today, how they're arranged on the site, this proposal is very comparable to what's there now and should not result in any detriment other than what's already there and existing, not just on this lot, but on all the other lots. So I think you can grant the floor area ratio variance in that regard. The remaining, there's a couple of C variances that are pre-existing, lot area and lot width, that can be corrected. The properties are developed on either side, the rear. So we have what we have. This is a 25 by 100 lot area, and it's been such for, I'm sure, decades, if not a century. The front setback variance, a little bit of a moving target. Went from 1.8 feet is existing, but it's going to be improved. It's going to get back to probably closer to an 8-foot setback. And I think that the board staff will be working with the engineer to nail that down and confirm that it does not result in any additional setbacks in the rear yard. The side setbacks, you heard me describe, is going to be a combined of 8 feet. The 0.8 on the one side is going to remain. My understanding is that they were going to be utilizing a portion of the foundation, and I think that's really beneficial, and that's why the variance will remain the same, because by reusing that portion of the foundation, there'll be lesser disturbance, lesser impact during construction on the adjoining properties. So I think that's really a better approach to development and design. The building coverage, it has been reduced from 42.4 to 40.4, variance of only 0.4, so that's that variance as well. I think all these variants can be granted based on the hardship of the undersized lot. I mean, again, we cannot correct if the regulations were strictly applied, we'd end up with a building that's 13 feet long. And that's really impractical for any kind of living space. So I think that hardship really supports the granting of the C1 variance in that regard. And as I've described, there's really no substantial detriment from this project given the character of the area and the character of the lot sizes in the area. So I think all of those variances, the three of them, can be granted pursuant to the C1 criteria due to the hardship of the undersized lot, and there is no substantial detriment that will result from either the zone plan, the intent purpose zone plan, since this is a permitted use and consistent with the character of the area, and there is no substantial detriment to the adjoining wall. Should be beneficial actually, when you're removing what is now a house with greater variances and not very appealing in terms of its visuals, and replacing it with a new modern two-family home. The other variance that is being requested is a parking variance. Each two-bedroom unit requires a space and a half, and this has, so that's 3 spaces, and we're providing no parking. Again, I think this really is a result of the hardship of the undersized lot. It's really impossible to provide on-site parking with a home that's of a reasonable size on a lot of this size. So you really would be granting this variance pursuant to the hardship criteria. I don't see there being a substantial detriment to the intended zone plan, since it's just for a two-family house. It's not significant. And I think if you look at all the other homes and properties along Remsen Avenue, they really don't have off-street parking. It probably is not a good idea to have it, because if you had every house with parking spaces, there'd be no on-street parking, because everything would be a curb cut. And you have the danger of Remsen Avenue being a relatively busy street, and people were trying to park back out onto the street. I think it's a safety issue. So in this particular case, because of the traffic volume on Remsen Avenue, the size of the lot, and the type of use that we have, I think it's probably more appropriate to grant the parking variance than to require parking. Not the list of testimony.
Okay, thank you. Any board member or professional have any questions, this witness?
Just a quick, is there anything in the planning or engineering reports that you don't agree to?
Yes, there's nothing that we disagree with. Always forget how to answer that question.
Okay, thank you. We will now open it up for public comment. Anybody from the public like to comment? Come on.
Please note that I recognize I've been sworn in, Charlie Craddockville. I live around the corner at 143 Saddam Street, been there for almost 10 years now. I don't see any of my neighbors here tonight, so I wanted to ask some questions, to gather some information for us, but also to hopefully prompt some thoughtful discussion, or at least some thought on the impact this will have on the neighborhood. So first of all, who are the principals of Cam Carey International?
I don't have them all. I have Mr. Min Chung, Cheung, but again, he's my contact person. But again, this ownership disclosure is on file.
Okay, and so the principals here tonight?
I didn't
Any
see
of them? Okay. Can somebody speak to the timeline for the project, when construction might begin, if they get the approvals?
Well, I can give you from experience, Charlie. I mean, we have to go, assuming we're granted tonight, we've got to wait for notice of action, publication, that drill, and then resolution compliance. We're now, I would hope that we could start, let us say, the fall September or October
This year.
of this year, assuming that everything falls into place. And that's ambitious, you know,
Right.
all cities, you know, have things to do besides this application.
Sure.
If it's not done by September, October, then probably
Wait till the
spring.
weather gets better.
The weather.
Thank you for that. So, can you tell me, or what can you tell me about what might be done to mitigate negative impacts from the construction and demolition? I know there's buildings really close by.
Well, you know, Charlie, that we have to give a logistics plan to the professionals, saying, you know, what's gonna happen, build the building permits, even though there's a footing and foundation, they'll still need a footing and foundations permit, because we're making changes to it. So, I mean, whatever the city requirements are for dirt and dust control, and noise control, and time of construction, I mean, they'll comply, that's what we require of them.
And how about notice to the neighbors of, you know, things that will be creating dust or noise? Is there gonna be any proactive communication? Because I know a lot of my neighbors are, you know, like me, renters, who, even if you notify the property owner, might not necessarily get to the renter. Is there gonna be any notification, hey, we're tearing down the building Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
That's a problem, though, it requires, Charlie, but if you wanna send me an email or something, you know, I'll give it to the owner, but other than that, it is a labor, if you say, because if I don't know who the tenants are, I don't get a certified list. John Doe moves out, who do I notify?
I mean, even just, you know,
Well,
knocking
you
on the door,
understand.
taping something on
I
the door,
understand.
and the reason I ask is to create the communication, have some dialogue, so
I will
I'll follow up with
will
you.
voluntarily do that, certainly.
Thank you, I do appreciate it, and, yeah, I just wanted to note, I know it was alluded to, the building's not attractive in its current state. Yeah, I have to agree, because it's all boarded up by whoever bought it, and it's literally surrounded by wood boards, I think, to, you know, keep people from camping out on the porch or intruding. But I do want to say it was a fine home, a good home for many years, and a great family lived there, the Howard family, and so until recently it's been just fine, and I don't want anybody to think it was a bad house or anything like that. So thank you for hearing me out and answering my questions.
Thank you.
Any other member of the public like to comment on this application? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion. Any board member have any other discussion or comments on this?
Can we clarify something about the variances? So what I was hearing was that the bulk variances that are applicable are the minimum lot area width, then the setback will not go less than 1.8, because right, that's gonna get moved around, so it's just not gonna go less than 1.8 if we vote.
His testimony was that it would reduce to approximately 8.
About 8,
So we
okay.
know
7, 8, 9-ish, yeah, 8-ish, plus or minus a foot.
Okay, so greater than 1.8. Okay. And then the side yard, that one remains constant, and then they're going to meet 40% for maximum building coverage.
not correct.
That's not correct?
There's variance for that, but there isn't a variance for impervious coverage.
Yes, so
Oh.
building coverage, the maximum is 40. They're proposed.
60.
They're proposed.
Building
Building.
So building coverage, the maximum is 40.
Right.
Yeah.
What's proposed is 40.4.
Okay.
So they're 0.4%.
Okay. Sorry, I got confused.
No
I thought
problem,
they
no,
said
it's okay.
something like that. And then impervious coverage, they will meet 60.
That's justified to.
Yeah, and then the FAR will not be, it'll be like 0.81, give or take.
That's a variance situation.
That's the variance,
He
yeah.
has approval to go over
Yes.
0.55.
Yeah. Well, do we vote like, okay, then if we vote on it and it's 0.81, but there's like all this movement of like the inches and stuff, it's just that it wouldn't be bigger, greater than 0.81?
So if it comes in at 0.85, they gotta come back to the board, or
Okay,
reduce
so
it.
that's what we're gonna do the 0.81, that's what we're voting on?
So theoretically, they came in with a plan that was 0.80, 0 or 0.79, we would be okay with it, but it would never go more than what you
Okay.
rented.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Okay, anybody else? All right, seeing none.
Oh. All right. Should the board act favorably, the following conditions shall apply. Compliance with the city engineering report dated May 22nd, 2024. Submission of all necessary easements and/or cross-access agreements for review and approval by the board attorney and city engineer. Payment of a site performance bond in an amount reviewed and approved by the city engineer. Submission of a site inspection escrow deposit for engineering inspection fees in amount pursuant to Title 16.24.160. Payment of all water and sewer connection fees pursuant to Titles 13.04 and 13.08. Issuance of a road opening permit from the city engineer if required. Compliance with the terms of the Big No Planning Consultants Report dated May 23rd, 2024. Payment of all other fees due to the city of New Brunswick related to development or use of this project. Payment of all outstanding taxes and water or sewer fees. Middlesex County Planning Board approval or waiver, the American Canal Commission approval or waiver, Freehold Soil Conservation District approval or waiver. Submit engineering site plan to comply with any changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments offered at the hearing. Submit architectural plans to comply with any changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments offered at the hearing. Payment of parking. All utilities and other site improvements to be maintained by the applicant at their sole expense. All on-site utilities to be constructed underground. All temporary encroachments in the public right-of-way shall require city council approval. All construction staging shall be done on-site unless an encroachment allowing the public right-of-way is approved by city council. The street shall be kept clean of sediment and debris. The applicant shall cause the streets to be cleaned if directed to do so by the director of public works. Traffic paths shall be installed at all construction exits. Placement of damaged streets, curbs, sidewalks as per direction of the city engineer. Schedule a pre-construction meeting with city engineering department. Variances requested are D4 FAR variance. We have a front yard setback variance, single yard setback variance, combined side yard setback variance, building coverage, lot size, parking, lot size, lot width, and I have nothing else. Are there any design waivers that I missed?
I don't have any.
And you have anything else? No other violation? Okay, that's the second exempt. Yeah, that's it.
You cover the parking?
I did, I said parking.
Okay, very good. I have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Krista?
Second.
There you go.
I'll second.
Oh,
I was gonna ask, I'm asking for a second.
I'll second.
okay. All right. Lindsay McManus?
Yeah.
Darren Merrill?
Yes.
Barry Sherman?
Yes.
Michael Belvin?
Yes.
Kristen Rich?
Yeah.
Michael Hublin?
Yes.
John Zimmer?
Yes,
All right, thank you. Congratulations.
congratulations.
Thank you very much. Go Rangers. Okay, was it okay tonight?
Very good.
All right, have a great, drive carefully.